Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Cool Sports Network. I am your host, Chase Coburn, and today I am joined by a very special guest, a reporter for the Yes Network covering teams such as the Yankees, Nets, and Liberty, Chris Shearn. Chris, thanks so much for coming on and welcome to the show.
Chase, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me, buddy.
Well, I am so glad you were able to come on. So, I always ask this to every announcer that does come on the show. When did you realize you wanted to become a broadcaster? And then once you did, what did you do to pursue that passion and make it a reality?
My junior year in high school, I'll try to be short with these stories.
Mm.
Sometimes I'm very long-winded, and I apologize in advance. But I know as an interviewer myself, the interviewee, if they're long-winded, I love that because I could pick and choose what I want
Wow.
to follow up with afterwards. So,
Yeah.
having said that, my junior year in high school, I played basketball. I started the year on the varsity squad, but I was playing mostly JV, and I was like the end of the bench guy on varsity. And I want to say halfway through the season, the varsity coach kicked me back down to JV full time, gave my roster spot to somebody else. And then when the season ended, I wanted to help my team. So even though I wasn't on the roster, I was basically a practice dummy and helped them to a state championship in 1990.
Wow.
So, uh, I didn't get any credit for it. At the end of the season, he came up to me, the coach, and he just basically said, if you don't play summer ball, you're looking at limited playing time next year. And if anybody knew me, they knew that I played baseball in the summer. Baseball was my sport. I just retired. Let me throw the air quotes up there. I retired like 2 years ago. Lots of surgeries from pitching for over 20 years will do that. But I basically told him, no, I'm not playing basketball. I'm playing baseball. So I didn't play basketball my senior year. And when the TV station, which was the local TV station for my high school, found this out, they said, why don't you be the analyst for the team who knows it better than you do? So that's when the itch started to get scratched. And I did that, I guess, for 3 years. My last year of high school, and then the first couple of years of college before I went away to Rowan University. And once I had that like feeling of pretty much this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I pursued that in school. I did everything I could at the radio station. When my senior year, I was the president of the RTVA Association, Radio and Television Association, and I secured a grant for $30,000 to get equipment because we had a TV station at Rowan, but we weren't using it for anything but for birthdays and stuff in the cafeteria for that day. So I went to my professors and I was like, this is kind of idiotic that we have a TV station, we have a great TV department, and we're not utilizing the TV station with content that we could be providing. So I didn't get to reap the benefits of what I brought in, but students since I've left have. And that really makes my chest push out a lot with pride that I was able to help bring that along for my university. After school, um, I was lucky enough, Chase, to be one of the interns for the NatB conference out in Las Vegas. It was right. I finished school in December of 95, and then I walked in 96. In January of 96, I was one of these interns, 15 students from Rowan and 15 students from universities across the country. We all went out to Las Vegas and we were interns at this conference. It's the National Association of Television Producers and Engineers. We were
Interesting.
basically, yeah, we were interns and we showed people where the bathroom was, where the conference floor was, where certain booths were. But we all got breaks. And in those breaks, we were encouraged by our professors, who were our chaperones, to go up to these tables, chop it up with people, make connections, and hopefully find some work. And as luck would have it, I always joke with everybody. I was just talking to Monmouth University last night on a Zoom, just like this. And I always joke about this, but I flew all the way out to Las Vegas to meet guys from South Hackensack, New Jersey at Major League Baseball Productions. So that was my first gig. I was a logger for MLB Productions, SNS, Sports News Satellite, which sent out highlights to all the NBC and CBS affiliates all across the country. And my job was to sit there in a little area, a carrel, as they would call it, and I would watch baseball and I would log. And I did that so well and so detailed that they made me an editor within like 2 months. The only problem was I wasn't getting benefits and I wasn't making enough money. My college loans were about to kick in 6 months after I graduated, and I was working 2 jobs. I was doing that at night. I was working at an A&P bakery in the morning. It's not as glamorous at the beginning as everybody thinks it is, unless,
Right.
of course, you know someone and you're able to get in something good really fast. But 9 times out of 10, you have to work for it. And I was one of those 9 times.
Right.
So after struggling, burning the candle at both ends with the A&P in the morning at 6 o'clock, and then I wouldn't get home until 2 in the morning from SNS, I coached my younger brother's Little League baseball team. And my shortstop's aunt worked for CNBC. They were starting MSNBC at the time. I didn't want to do news, but it was probably the best decision I ever made to send my resume and take that job, because I learned everything about the television business behind the scenes, and that has made me a better on-air person, because I know what goes on behind the scenes before it gets out to me, and I know those are the people that make me look good. And if you have that mindset and that personality as an on-air talent, then you're way ahead of the game.
Absolutely. And kind of going back to your point on Rowan, how like you've seen all these broadcasters come after you.
Mhm.
Rowan really seems like a popular school for
It is.
broadcasting. And I know personally multiple people now that are going to Rowan. So it's amazing to see the impact you've had on that school. So I'm going to kind of follow up here on MSNBC. So
Mhm.
as you kind of mentioned, that was your first main role in this business. And you weren't working in sports. It was more like history and more like some of the stuff you were
Yeah.
working on.
Yeah.
So even though it's still broadcasting, what would you say is the main difference between working in like history and things like that compared to
Yeah.
working in the sports
Yeah,
business?
yeah, news is very serious. We've all seen how the political spectrum has blew up the past, I don't know, 6, 7 years.
Yeah,
And sports is kind of like the escape of all of that nonsense. So that's pretty much the difference. Like, sports gives you an opportunity. And I'll give you an example, Chase, because I was at MSNBC the morning of September 11th, 2001.
yeah.
And I witnessed all that devastation. One of my friends from high school actually passed away in the North Tower.
Sorry to
Uh,
hear that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. He actually started in sports. His name is Chris Dinkoff. He started in sports, and I remember this very vividly. When I was a sophomore, I was a freshman, he was a senior. So when I was a sophomore, I was at homecoming, and Chris was actually working for the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes out in California, and he was their scoreboard guru. That's how he was getting his feet wet, all the way out 3,000 miles away in Rancho Cucamonga. He came back to South River, New Jersey for homecoming. I saw him at halftime at the concession stand, and he was honest with me. He said it was hard, but he said to always go after it and always pursue it if that's your passion. I mean, there was nobody more passionate than Chris, especially when it came to his Yankees and his Villanova Wildcats. So he was a very good stepping stone for me to look up to, and to basically try to model myself, pattern myself after. And I thank God that he was in my life when he was in my life. Unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't work out, and sometimes you flounder, and you don't get your big break. And that was the case for Chris. And he went into business and finance, and that's why he was in that building that day. And if we fast forward a little bit, I was always taught, and this is one of Dink's philosophies too, you pay it forward,
Right.
and I stayed in touch with his mom and dad, and they got a divorce after this happened, and his dad remarried and had another son. His name was Ian, and he needed an internship. So I knew some guys down at Trenton with the Thunder when the Yankees were their affiliate. Now they're the Blue Jays. And I reached out to them and I said, "Hey, I have this kid. He's like a legacy with me. I knew his brother. He died September 11th." And the guy stopped me and he said, "Are you talking about Chris Dinkoff?" I said, "How do you know Chris?" He said, "Chris flew out from Rancho Cucamonga to help us with our scoreboard." So, short story long, Ian got the internship because his half brother helped the Trenton Thunder with their
That's crazy.
scoreboard. And I had no idea that had happened. So it was just such a cool feeling to be able to put Ian
Yeah.
in that situation and to know that he had a connection with the Trenton Thunder. And it still makes me feel so happy to this day. But sports, to answer your question after that story, it's, and I brought up September 11th because when sports came back, and I know you're too young to you weren't
Yeah.
even born yet,
Right.
but when sports came back, it kind of gave people something to take their mind off of everything that was going on. All the firefighters, all the police officers, all the Port Authority police officers, everyone who died in the Pentagon, everyone who died on Flight 93 in Pennsylvania, their families. And I heard countless stories from firefighters and police officers who were painstakingly going through that rubble and that debris, trying to find their friends and just trying to make sense of everything. They were able to watch the Yankees or the Mets or the Giants or the Jets. And for 3 hours, they didn't think about it. They knew that when the game was over, they had to get back to work and it was just going to hit them like a ton of bricks. But for that 3 hours, that's what sports is able to do. It's able to take your mind off everything else. Now, in the grand scheme of things, they're just games. Let's be
Yeah.
honest. This is not brain surgery happening, but it is all of our livelihoods, and it's what I grew up loving. So that's basically the difference. News is so serious and so involved, and now it's just that sometimes it's comical. And sports is just the thing. I think it's the glue that holds everything together.
That's what I feel too. I feel like as you've been mentioning here throughout, when you were answering that question, it's a great distraction to kind of, you're allowed to enjoy something, for like a 2 or 3 hour portion. And I'm
Right.
very sorry for your loss with Chris, but I'm
Thank
glad you
you.
were able to get his,
Yeah,
half brother an internship and all that.
and
That's
and
a great
and
story.
that's why I wanted to tell you that story.
Yeah.
It's sad at the beginning, but at the end, it all comes together.
Absolutely. So one of the biggest things you've done in your career is you had the privilege to produce Super Bowl 35, uh,
Yeah.
which was between the New York Giants and
Oh,
the
no, not 35, 34.
34 it
34.
was.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was that experience like? Because that was the first year of the 2000s. It's been a
Yeah.
while, but what was that experience like producing the Super Bowl?
That was the Rams and Titans, actually. And it was my first Super
Oh,
Bowl experience. It was for MSNBC. And I was the producer for our sports anchor. The entire sports department consisted of Rob Nicoleski, who was our sports anchor, and Chris Shearn, who was the sports producer. So it was the two of us in Atlanta. It was my first ever experience at the Super Bowl. I'll tell you a great story. First of all, we did live hits every hour on the hour. I think it was like 28 past every hour. Rob and I were live. So it was just getting guests for him and making sure he was all set up with everything he was going to talk about at that particular time and that particular day. But the Saturday before the game, there was a Mike Tyson fight. And they had a section of the media area cordoned off so everybody could watch it on a huge screen. So I'm standing by the door waiting for Rob to come in. He was outside. He knew somebody, so he was talking to somebody. I knew no one. This is before I made any connections or contacts.
right.
So I'm just standing there waiting, and I see everybody looking. It looked like they were looking at me at the door. So I'm like freezing, like, oh my God, what did I do? What's going on? So
Yeah.
then my brain says, idiot, it's not you. Turn your head. So I turn like this, and right over my right shoulder, Muhammad Ali. He was right there. So
Wow.
I'm just like, yeah, okay, now I get it. Everybody's like, everybody's
They're not
gas.
interested in you. They're interested in
No, no,
Muhammad
no, no,
Ali.
no, no. They're gasping at the greatest. Floats like a butterfly, stings like a bee, walks right by me at the Super Bowl. So that was a great moment. Watching the game from the media section, a great moment. You're talking about a kid who grew up in a small town in New Jersey. He's sitting at the Super Bowl in Atlanta. I have no dog in the fight. Rob was a huge Rams fan, so he was actually engaged in that. But Rams Titans, I had no dog in the fight. The game, the Titans came like this close
Yep.
to winning the game on the final play. It was just a great experience to be there all week. And here's another great story too. We had packed up everything. We couldn't get into the media hotel because the network decided late to send us. So we were in some hotel down the way. Uh, we were just about to leave. In fact, we were at the airport, Chase. Our bags had already gone through security. All the equipment, everything, everything was in my huge duffel bag. I mean, it had to be about 4 feet long that I had all the equipment in, and it was on the airplane. It was gone. We are just about to go through security ourselves, and my work phone goes off. You guys need to stay because they just arrested Ray Lewis.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is when Ray Lewis got involved in that thing in
I knew
Buckhead
it was around that time of the
with the
Super Bowl, so
stabbing.
I didn't know if
So
that story was going there. Yeah.
I told him, I said, all the equipment is gone. I have nothing. It's on the plane. It's going back to New Jersey. What do you want me to do? We'll set you up at the NBC affiliate in Atlanta and blah, 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 blah. So Rob and I had to stay like another 2-3 days. And he said, you know what, dude? If we're staying at the media hotel now because everybody left and they had plenty of availability. So we stayed at the media hotel. We had to stop in the shop downstairs and we had to buy clothes. We had to buy toothpaste, toothbrush, shampoo. This is when I had hair a little bit, but it was still there. But then we covered the Ray Lewis thing for the next 2 or 3 days, and we met people in the Atlanta bureau. They were all great people. Kerry Sanders for NBC was based out of there back then. He told us a great story about Don Shula and how Don Shula didn't want to talk to him. And he walked up the steps of the plane, the late, great Hall of Fame coach Don Shula. And Kerry Sanders said, and I quote, I have talked to the Pope. Get him off the plane and get him down here right now. And Shula came off the plane and talked to Kerry Sanders. I thought that was a great story.
Yeah, and obviously, I don't know if you know this, I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan, so I
Oh,
know a lot
nice.
about.
Well, I'm a
Yeah.
Giant fan, so
Ah,
but you weren't
yeah.
around in 2000, were you?
And no, but
No.
yeah. So yeah, but I know the next year was obviously Ravens Giants in the Super Bowl. That's
Yes.
funny. But
Yes.
that Ray Lewis situation, I know a lot about that.
Mhm.
And luckily so far in my short-lived young broadcasting career, I really haven't decided or really had to cover a tragic story or
Right.
something whereas like so many unknowns like an arrest or something like that. So knowing that Ray Lewis was, one of the stars of the NFL, and you have a
Mhm.
crazy situation, the Super Bowl just happened, you're ready to go home, and all this is happening. How do you kind of balance the fact that, like, all right, we need to be TV people with personalities, but at the same time, somebody got murdered, whoever it was,
Yeah.
and like, how do
That
you kind of balance that?
that's a very good question, and you you asked about the news and the sports thing earlier. That's when you have to kind of take both and kind of meld them together.
Right.
That's when you have to put your news hat on. That's when you have to take your sports personality, the people you see on Sports Center, and you have to kind of tamper that down, and you have to turn into a news sports guy. You have to handle it very delicately. You have to handle it with, you have to get facts. You cannot speculate on anything when stuff. I mean, you watch shows now like First Take or whatever
Yeah.
Skip Bayless does on Fox. I don't even know, but these
Yeah.
guys speculate constantly. The media today is a lot different than it was back then. Back when I was doing that Super Bowl and the Ray Lewis thing happened, there weren't a lot of talking heads, if any, in the sports realm, unless you were on Sports Center. But even back then, you didn't have all these NFL shows with all these talking heads. You had maybe one or two shows. It was maybe Chris Berman and Tom Jackson.
Right.
Um,
The
and that's what
oldies.
you got. And those two had personalities and they were
Right.
great. The Sunday night stuff that they did,
Awesome.
it's unparalleled. Just like, look, I don't know, when were you born? What year?
2011.
All right, you were born in 2011, so you never got to see Madden and Summerall. And me and my friends were just talking about this. We went to the Giant game on Monday night against Seahawks. We
Oh,
were
gosh.
very disappointed. But, I'm 50 years of age. I've been a fan of this team for most of my life, and I'm used to disappointment. So there are a lot of fans in there that were distraught and dismayed and just downright deranged. And I walked out of there and I was fine. I just, it doesn't bother me. I didn't play. What the
Yeah.
heck am I going to get all worked up
Right.
about?
It's always the joke. Like, is Daniel Jones going to wake up and worry about what Chris Shearn is doing? And so, like, you
No,
can't worry about Daniel
no.
Jones.
And by the way, since we brought him up, can we kill the noise that it's Daniel Jones's fault? I've played football and I've watched football my entire life. And even if you haven't, I mean, my wife who hates sports, she could even see that if the quarterback can't take his 5 or 7 step drop and set his feet, there's no way he could have success.
Right.
The Seattle Seahawks had 5 total sacks in their first 3 games. They sacked Daniel Jones 10 times Monday night. They doubled their sack total in one game.
Right. Well,
So,
you were without some starting offensive linemen, I do know,
well,
so that probably hurt.
Schmitz started the game, but he got hurt in the
Yeah.
game. Andrew Thomas wasn't playing.
$100 million guy. Yeah.
It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. But I don't
Yeah.
want to talk about the Giants.
And they're also letting me down. I was really high on them in the offseason. I'm like, this team's going to be good. And then
Yeah.
not looking like it right now.
No, not at all.
Yep. So we can kind of transition now to the teams that you do cover.
Yeah,
And you are the play-by-play announcer for the New York Liberty
I am
of
indeed.
the WNBA.
Hmm.
And something that I have noticed over the past few years is how much the WNBA and women's basketball as a whole has grown in popularity. And even me myself, someone that wasn't watching a ton of women's basketball, I've been watching it now because of
Yeah,
how popular it has been. Why do you think we're seeing this change in women's basketball popularity right now?
I think we're seeing the change because I think the athletes are getting better. That's what I think. And this is not to take away from what the league was early on when it started in 1997, because you had a lot of top tier talent that are in the Hall of Fame that helped start the WNBA. But I think it's more across the league now. You had certain teams that were just far above and beyond everyone else back then, where you have more teams that could win a title. I know this year it was different because you had the 2 super teams that are in the finals in Vegas and in New York, but you still had teams that could have been a problem. Like Dallas had a very formidable team. They took Las Vegas to task in the second game of their series against the Aces. They didn't win. I mean, we were hoping for a win, so it made the Aces play a third game, but they were able to sweep Dallas out of it. Atlanta made some strides. You also had Connecticut, who traded away Jonquel Jones, a former MVP, and it took a while for her to get her footing. And pardon the pun, I mean, she had a foot injury in the finals last season against Las Vegas, but she worked through that. And since the All-Star break, she's been an absolute beast. She's had a double-double in 6 straight playoff games, which is a new WNBA record. It's just you have so many players that are so athletic and they play the game so well. And something else, Chase, I grew up, I was born in 73. I grew up pretty much in the 80s watching the NBA. And in the 80s, the NBA wasn't dunks and threes. Okay. You do have your handful of guys, 10, 15 guys who are very proficient at the mid-range jumper. But for the most part, I mean, the analytics have taken over. Three is worth more than two, and that's what teams are building their teams around, guys who could shoot threes.
I mean, Mike D'Antoni a few years ago when
There
the
you
Rockets
go.
didn't work, they literally built the team based
Yeah.
on math, and it
And
didn't
and
work. But
and
yeah,
the Phoenix Suns, 7 seconds or less, he had that offense where they
right,
just pushed and they had Steve Nash. It helps when you have Steve Nash, by the way, and Amari Stoudemire.
yeah,
But I think these women play the game the way I watched it growing up. It's ball movement, it's cutting, it's just the sweet science of basketball. I really do believe there's something to that. I say this all the time. I talk about the WNBA, and that's why I love calling these games because it's basketball at its basics. You know, these women play the game. They're like a hot knife through butter. That's what they're like. There's the precision is there. Sometimes you have turnovers, but in what league do you not have turnovers? In the NBA, you
right,
have plenty of turnovers. They
for sure.
play the game the right way. And are you going to see dunks left and right? No, you're going to see Brittany Griner do it every once in a while, and that's about it. But I like that. I like the fact that you're running motion offenses. You're making the extra pass. It's ball movement. I'm a big Hoosiers movie fan,
Yep,
and fictional coach Gene Hackman, Norman Dale, 4 passes. That's me, man. That's what I
yeah,
want. That's what I want.
fundamentals.
Yes, that's what I want to see on a basketball court. And that's what these women bring to the table. And I'm telling you right now, this finals between the Aces and Liberty, look, I want New York to win, obviously. I'm hoping they do it in 4 games because that would mean they do it at home in game 4. They just have to split in Las Vegas and take both in Brooklyn. I just have this gut feeling. People have been waiting for this. It's going to go 5. There's going to be a decisive game in Las Vegas in game 5. I'm not going to be able to take it. My anxiety and everything else.
It's like
It,
me when I watch sports every Sunday.
yeah. It's just, I'm just so close and I feel like I'm part of the family
Right.
and the players mean so much to me. The organization means so much to me. I started in 2019. I was always a casual fan of the Liberty. I grew up in this area. I'm from New Jersey. I always kept my finger on the pulse of every team in New York. I'm a hometown guy. I don't root for any teams outside this area. I am Knicks. I am Rangers. I'm a Net fan too. I have to say that too. I pull for these guys because I love them, but I grew up a Knick fan. I'll be honest. Rangers, Yankees, and Giants, and I've always pulled for the Liberty. But in 2019, when I got the gig at Yes, I dove in head first and I haven't stopped. I love telling their stories. I love learning about everyone who plays in this league. And the other thing that really drives me to the league is that how much these women care. They care not only about the game, but about social justice and everything else. It means the world to me to be a part of it. And I'm so happy that Yes gave me that opportunity back in 2019.
Yeah, and things are definitely going well for you. And I wish you good luck on your on the finals because, like you said, you're like a part of the team. It's like
Yeah,
a family to you, and so I hope your team there is able to
I
get.
hope so too, Chase.
Yes, definitely. So, this year was an interesting year for the New York Yankees, who I know you do cover quite a bit on the Yes Network. You missed the playoffs for the first time in 7 years,
Right.
and things were just really complicated in New York. A ton of injuries as well, stuff out of their control. So, what do you think the Yankees need to do next season to go back to being the championship contender they were, especially in an American league that sees teams like Baltimore and Texas that seem to be the future of the conference?
Well, I'm old school, Chase. So I'll give you the old school answer: pitching, pitching, pitching. And I don't think you could win as a baseball team. And I know all the analytic people out there will shoot this down and say I'm a moron, but I'm going to say it. Your starters can't be going 4 and 5 innings the bulk of the season. Like Clark Schmidt, he had a consistent season. Okay. But there weren't a lot of times he went more than 5 innings. And sometimes it took him 94 pitches to get through 4 and change. That taxes. Now, the Yankees had the best bullpen in the major leagues, but by the end of the season, who was on the injured list? Wandy Peralta, Jonathan Loaisiga went back on. It's just you cannot continually do that for an entire season and expect to be successful, especially when the postseason rolls around. You can't. I'm not saying your starters have to go 7 innings every start, but they have to. I'll give you a perfect example, and I know people are going to kill me for this too if they see this. We were in the studio one time, and it happened to be a game. Clark Schmidt, 94 pitches, 4 2/3 innings. He was interviewed in the post game. He said he loved his stuff. So I I asked our research director. I said, "Hey, do me a favor. See how many games Greg Maddux pitched a complete game under 94 pitches." Do you know the answer to
I
that
do not.
question? 15.
Goodness, wow.
15 games. 15 complete games, 94 pitches or less.
That's impressive.
You could sit there all day and tell me the league was different back then. These guys weren't as good as they were back then. I hear all the time from these analytic guys throughout every system that, guys throw harder now. You can't go the other way. I want to bring back guys like Ted Williams. I wish Ted Williams was still around. I wish Tony Gwynn was still around. I wish Kirby Puckett was still around. Don Mattingly said it the other day. It's not about exit. It was on Twitter. It's not about exit velocity. It's not about launch angle. You could take the ball the other way if you practice it. This is one of the best hitters that ever lived in Don Mattingly. If he didn't hurt his back, he would be in the Hall of Fame right now. It wouldn't even be a debate. I know this debate's going to go on forever and ever, but it wouldn't be a debate if he didn't hurt his back. And guess what? He didn't take HGH. He didn't take steroids. So he didn't prolong his career with that nonsense. And that's why I have such a strong opinion on not putting the guys who did do that stuff, speculated or otherwise, into the Hall of Fame. Because if you have guys like Mattingly who didn't do the stuff to prolong his career and help his back, why should anybody else who did it get in? It's not fair. Right. It's just not fair. I don't want to open a can of worms with the steroids, but the Yankees need to start with pitching. Carlos Rodon has to be better. They signed him to that 6-year deal. I think we're going to hear when Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone have their, postseason press conference that we always do on the S Network. You're going to hear that Rodon wasn't 100%. He was just gutting it out because of his contract. Because if you listen to anything that guy says at any time of his career, he's a bulldog. He's going to go out there and he's going to pitch. If he's hurt, if he's tweaked a little bit, he's going to pitch. So I'm going to take this season and I'm going to throw it in the garbage because I think he was pitching hurt. That's just me. And I'm speculating, right. And I shouldn't speculate.
Yeah.
Right. I shouldn't speculate. That's like a commandment in this business. But I'm going to go ahead and do that because I think what he threw out there this year, he's better than that. We both know that, Chase.
Right.
Garrett Cole is the Cy Young winner in the American League. If you could put those two guys at the top of the rotation, completely healthy and ready to go, I don't think you bring Severino back. I was talking to a couple people at work, and if Luis Severino wants to be a Yankee, I think you have a conversation with him and you say, Luis, look at what Phil Hughes did for us in 2009. He went into the bullpen. He was throwing 97 miles an hour. He was our 7th inning guy. He was getting huge outs. He needed 2 pitches, and he did his job. We'll sign you for a year. Come back, and maybe we could salvage your career out of the bullpen because it's not – I don't think he's built to be a starter. I don't
Right.
think he is. Mariano Rivera started his career as a starter. Now, I'm not saying Luis Severino is going to be Mariano Rivera. So everybody kill that noise right now. But he might be a better reliever than he is a starter.
Right. We see
But
that all the time. Yeah.
but here's the thing, and he has every right to do this. Starters make more money than relievers.
Right.
So if he wants to continue his track as a starter and make starter money, I would bid him farewell. I would wish him best of luck. Adios. Because he cannot stay healthy. And when he is healthy, we saw those 4 or 5 starts in a row where he's giving up 7, 8 runs a pop. That helped the Yankees go right down the toilet this year. That can't happen. You know, before the season, when you looked at the rotation, when you thought you were going to be healthy with Cole, Rodon, Severino, Montas, and I could see his face and I can't think of his name.
It happens.
Oh my God. Why am I spacing on his name? You know why? Because he got hurt and he couldn't pitch. He was going to come back and then he got hurt again. The lefty. He had all the funky. Good Lord. Hopefully you could edit this because I'm going to look like an absolute idiot.
Goodness. Yeah.
Nestor Cortez, for crying
There
out
we
loud.
go. Mario and Luigi
There
combined.
you go. I should have said Mario and Luigi. So yeah. So if you looked at that rotation before the season started with Nestor and the other 4, you would have to say to yourself, wow, they're stacked. I saw a lot of people saying they had the best rotation in Major League Baseball.
I wouldn't
And,
blame him.
and then the wheels came off the bus and we all know what happened. Plus they didn't hit. DJ LeMahieu didn't hit in the first half. Giancarlo Stanton was not Giancarlo Stanton. And surprise, surprise, he got hurt again. Aaron Judge got hurt. And listen, when Judge got hurt, what did the offense do?
Nothing.
Nothing.
They didn't produce.
And that can't happen. And then you got a little juice at the end of the season, and they started to make a little run with the Martian when he got called up, and then he got hurt. So it's just, sometimes you have seasons where you just run into these injuries and you can't help it. But the Yankees have to get stronger with pitching. Their starters have to go deeper. And the offense has to turn it around, obviously. And if those two things happen, they'll be right back in it next year. But you need to make sure that you have guys around Aaron Judge that could pick up the slack if and when he gets hurt.
Right. And maybe next year will be the year where, like, maybe Anthony Volpe will develop, even though he didn't really do that, I think, the way we anticipated in his rookie year.
No, but he faced some adversity in the first half, and then he had the chicken parm with Austin Wells, and he turned it around in the second half, and he played decent defense. And look, here's something about Volpe, and it's not fair to anybody. And the only one that lived up to it so far is Didi Gregorius, because he was the shortstop after Derek Jeter.
Right.
You cannot fairly compare someone to number 2. You can't. And when Volpe's walking into the team and, he's the next Jeter. Come on, guys. You can't do that to the kid. That's so much pressure on him to not only field that position like Jeter did, but hit like Jeter did. So now that he's got the year under his belt, and you saw this too. This is another positive, another silver lining in the cloud. You saw him make adjustments as the season went along. That is a positive thing to look at. So hopefully next year, as you just said, Chase, he makes that next step and he makes the Yankees even better.
Absolutely. And I know you mentioned him a long time ago because this was an incredible answer you just had. But you mentioned Tony Gwynn. I don't know if you know this, a fun fact. He is actually the San Diego State men's basketball team all-time leading scorer.
That doesn't shock me. Considering what he did on the baseball field.
Yep.
Having Tony Gwynn have the stats there too, it doesn't shock me at all.
He finds the stats and he has the versatility even in multiple sports. It's great.
It
My
was.
last part. Yep.
Do you want a quick Tony Gwynn story really quick?
Sure. Go ahead.
I just saw it on Twitter. They had a game that was suspended by rain. They were walking back to the clubhouse, and he told his teammate where he was going to hit the ball, where the pitcher was going to throw the ball, and what pitch the pitcher was going to pitch to him. They went to sleep. They woke up. They went back to the park. They resumed the game. First pitch was the exact pitch in the exact location he said it was going to be, and he hit the ball in the same place that he said he was going to hit it, and he brought in the game-winning run.
That's amazing.
So that's the type of player that I grew up with, and that's the type of player that I kind of glue myself to. So
Right.
if you're going to sit there and tell me you can't go the other way, I'm going to sit there and say, yeah, you can. Yeah, you can.
So, kind of my last question here about some sports teams that you cover.
Yeah.
The Brooklyn Nets. It was an interesting year because I think we thought and we were kind of seeing that, maybe Kyrie and KD could work. I mean, if there was a new third star in that team every single year, I can't
Yeah.
keep track. So then they said, let's let them all go. Kyrie went to Dallas, KD went to Phoenix. Let's start from scratch. And a guy that you got in that Kevin Durant deal is Mikal Bridges, and he
Mm-hmm.
was one of the top scorers in the NBA in the second half of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see Mikal Bridges as the future of this basketball team? And if not, who's the future in that basketball team?
He is 100% the future. Him and Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson just signed a multi-year extension with Brooklyn.
He's
Uh,
great.
yeah, Ben Simmons. Everything that's coming out of camp right now points to Ben. This is Ben's team, and the
Yeah,
team goes as far as Ben takes it. Now, if you're a Net fan and you're listening to this, you're saying, "Well, the guy hasn't been consistently
yeah,
playing for God knows how long." But here's the positivity you could look at. He feels great. He's got no restrictions. And I think with Katie and Kyrie gone, he might know this is his team. There might be a little bit more comfortability with him on this team. And I think we're going to see him. This is just me again speculating. I think we're going to see him lead. And towards the end of the game, Bob Lorenz and Frank Isola asked Spencer Dinwiddie this question. They basically said, whose team is it and who's going to take that shot at the end of the game? And they said, Mikal Bridges. That's who's going to take it
right.
because he proved it with Team USA in the World Cup. It's not going to be Ben because he's not a 3-level scorer. He can't shoot a 3, but
You know
Bridges
that.
can. Bridges can hit a 3. He can hit a midi. He could get to the rim. And
Great.
Spencer Dinwiddie's not too shabby either, but he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Nets shake out from this year to next year. But to answer your question, Bridges is the bridge to the future. It really is. Pardon the corny pun there.
Yes, definitely. And I was really cheering for you guys against the 76ers. I could not stand the whole Harden and the beat thing. And I'm like, let's see this young team make a run. And maybe they go against Boston, make a run. Who knows? But I actually predicted them to take that series to 7 and was humiliated by my friends for it. But I'm always cheering for you guys. And I love Mikal Bridges. I think he's a
Yeah,
really talented player.
Maxey and DeAnthony Melton, they were pretty
Yep.
great when they were on the floor together. When Harden went to the bench, those two did their thing. And Embiid didn't really have a strong series, but they had a strong series from Tobias Harris, and a lot of their fringe players had a great series. But you have to remember something too, Chase, and this is something the players have been saying at camp, and it makes a lot of sense. And Bridges actually said people don't put it into perspective enough. You had players coming from Phoenix, you had players coming from Dallas, and you had players that were with Brooklyn. That's 3 different terminologies, 3 different defenses, 3 different
Right.
offensive philosophies, and you're all trying to bring it together by the time the playoffs roll around. And you're talking about a month and a half before the playoffs start. However, they didn't do too shabby. I mean, they kept it together. They were a little under 500 for the rest of the season, but they got the 6th seed. They didn't have to play in the play-in tournament. And it's going to be interesting to see with a full camp with some new faces, Dennis Smith Jr., Darius Baisley. You also have Lonnie Walker the fourth, who could help your perimeter game. It's going to be very interesting to see what these guys do with a full camp and getting to know one another. And Jacques Vaughn not coming in as an assistant, but coming in as the full-time head coach in his full first year of training
Yeah.
camp.
And a guy you didn't mention that I really love, or maybe you mentioned him at some point, Nick Claxton. I think he's one of
Oh
the best
God, he
rim
gets better.
protectors in the
Yeah,
entire league.
he
Yeah,
gets he gets better every year, and the fact that he wasn't on either NBA defensive team, all defensive team last year is absolutely
I
criminal.
consider him to be on my first team actually.
Yeah, and he didn't
When
make
I was
first
watching.
or second, and it
It's
was
crazy.
absolutely criminal. And he only got 7 third-place votes for Defensive Player of the Year. But as he told our Bob Lorenz and Frank Isola at Media Day, it just puts an extra big chip on his shoulder and adds fuel to the fire. So we're going to see. And he worked on his jump shot a lot this offseason. So Clax, who led the league in field goal percentage last year, a little over 70% from the field. I would watch out for big things from him this year. And it's also his last year before hitting free agency.
Yes, it's a contract year for him as well. So you could see him go off and really blossom into an
Mm-hmm.
incredible center if he isn't already. So Nets are a team to watch out for this year. But Chris, before we do wrap up the show, I
Mm-hmm.
ask this to everybody I interview, whether it's an announcer or a player. I always ask, the piece of advice that they would give to a certain person. So as a sports broadcaster, if you needed to give a piece of advice to an aspiring sports broadcaster like myself, what would it
Mm-hmm.
be and why?
Always believe in yourself. Always. Because there are going to be people. The big thing, Chase, you have to remember is you might be phenomenal at what you do. And I could tell you right now, how old are you?
12.
You're 12 years old and you are head and shoulders above a lot of other people who
Thank you.
want to do this for a living, but don't put in the time, the effort, and the work. That's
Thank you.
huge. Derek Jeter said it. Uh, People might be better than me, but they're not going to outwork me. And
Right.
I said that to say this. You always have to believe in yourself. You can't let other people get inside your head because if you let other people get inside your head and let it rattle around, it's gonna. This has happened to me countless amounts of times. I'm giving you advice that I should have given to myself, and it happened to me recently too. Sometimes you think, and you're right that you're good at what you do, but there are certain people who may not think that, and it could be the boss that you work for, it could be a producer that you work with, but that doesn't mean that's the be all end all or that's your definition. That's their definition, and someone's going to see you and see what you do and how you perform, and they're going to love the definition of you. So you have to stay in your lane, be yourself, and be confident in your abilities. And if you're able to do that, you'll go far. And I have no doubt in my mind that you will go far. And by the way, I am at your beck and call for the rest of your career.
Thank
So
you.
whenever you need
Thank
help, whenever you need advice, this is the Dinka philosophy, and it's going forward wherever I talk.
you. Absolutely.
Whenever you need me, I'm here. So it doesn't end today. This is just the beginning.
Thank you so much. And I love how, that story from the beginning all connects. And, Chris will wrap up the show here. Probably the best storyteller we've ever had on the podcast. What an interview this was. Chris Shearn, thank you so much for
Thank you,
coming on the
Chase. I
show and doing
appreciate
the show.
that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That is going to do it for today. Again, Chris, thank you so much. Alongside Chris Shearn on today's episode, as always, I'm your host, Chase Coburn, and we'll see you next time here on the Cool Sports Network.